Welcome to The Explainer. When we talk about addiction, our minds usually go to one person, right? The person who's struggling. But what about the person right next to them? Turns out the biggest damage might be the kind you can't even see. Today, we're going to dig into this really powerful study that shines a light on the hidden trauma and, yeah, the sexual suffering of their intimate partners. Let's just start with this. This is the raw human side of what we're talking about. This quote, wow, it's not just words on a screen. It's a real window into this feeling of being violated, of having that intimacy just shattered. And that's exactly what we're going to get into. Okay, so let's talk about this unseen side of addiction. Usually, all the focus is on the person with the compulsive behavior. But what's so important about this Australian study is that it completely flips the script. It puts the spotlight where it's rarely been before, on the deep and honestly overlooked crisis their intimate partners are going through. All right, first things first, let's get on the same page. What are we actually talking about here? The study uses the term compulsive sexual behavior, or CSB. You might have also heard it called sexual addiction. Basically, it's a pattern of sexual behaviors that someone just can't control, and it's causing real negative effects on their life and their relationships. So, the behavior itself is one thing, but the real explosion, the moment the partner finds out, that moment of discovery, it's like a bomb going off. It kicks off this really specific and devastating psychological crisis. And this injury, it actually has a name. And that name is betrayal trauma. Now, this isn't just about hurt feelings or, being lied to. It's so much deeper than that. We're talking about a wound that completely changes how a person sees the world, how they feel safe or don't feel safe. Think about it like this. Betrayal trauma happens when the very person who's supposed to be your safe harbor suddenly becomes the storm. It's the ultimate violation of trust. And because it's so fundamental, it shows up in some really serious, clinically recognized ways. Okay, take a look at these symptoms. What's absolutely wild is how much this looks like post-traumatic stress disorder, right? PTSD. You've got the hypervigilance, the obsessive thoughts, reliving things over and over. This is not just being upset. This is a full-blown textbook trauma response. And if you want to see what that trauma looks like in real life, just read this quote. Those clinical terms we just looked at, this is what they feel like. It's not some abstract idea. It's being so terrified that sleeping on cold, hard concrete feels safer than being in your own house. Just let that sink in for a second. So as you can probably guess, this kind of trauma doesn't just stay in the mind. It completely rewires the most intimate part of a relationship, their sexual connection. The betrayal doesn't just crack the foundation of trust, it basically poisons the well of intimacy. Then this next finding is just staggering. 100%. Let me say that again, 100%. Every single woman in the study said her sexuality was negatively affected. This wasn't like, oh, most of them felt this way. No, it was universal. That tells you this is a core part of the experience. So, how did this trauma actually show up? Well, the researchers found two main reactions, and they're pretty much polar opposites, which is fascinating. On one side, you have hyposexuality, basically a total shutdown of desire. But on the other, you get this temporary increase in sexuality. It's a paradox that just goes to show how confusing and conflicting this whole trauma is internally. This quote, it's just a heart-wrenching look at what that hyposexuality feels like. For so many of these women, intimacy turned into a minefield. The person they loved now just becomes a walking trigger, a reminder of the betrayal, and it makes pleasure just impossible. And that feeling of being, as she says, permanently broken, it's just devastating. But then you get this twist that you might not expect. A huge majority, we're talking 75%, went through a period of the exact opposite reaction, at least for a while. A temporary and super confusing spike in sexual activity. Now, it's so important to get this right. This isn't because they suddenly felt more desire. Not at all. It's what's known as trauma bonding. And it's a coping mechanism, but not a healthy one. It's this desperate attempt to reconnect, or maybe to compete with whatever was happening outside the relationship, or just to feel any sense of control when everything feels like it's spinning out. And this participant's words, they just lay out the painful logic perfectly. It had nothing to do with pleasure. It was just this confusing, desperate plan to try and make the pain stop. And the worst part? As she says, afterward came this wave of shame and embarrassment, which just piles more trauma on top of the original wound. Okay, so after all of that, where do we go? I mean, identifying the problem is step one, but it can't be the only step. The good news is the study doesn't just leave us there. It actually lays out a pretty clear roadmap for healing and support. Yeah, just saying this is a problem isn't enough, right? So the researchers put together some really clear, practical recommendations. The goal is to build an actual system of support for these partners who have been suffering in silence. So, on the big picture, policy level, they're talking about real structural change. Things like public awareness campaigns to kill the stigma around this, getting money set aside for the right kind of therapy, trauma-informed care. And it even goes into things like workplace policies, like getting mental health leave and changing legal stuff to better protect partners. And for the therapists and counselors who are right there in the trenches, the message is super clear. You have to treat this as the specific trauma that it is. That means therapy designed for this that really validates what the partner is going through. And a huge piece of the puzzle is creating support groups so partners can heal together and finally realize they are not alone in this. So, all of this leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? This research makes it crystal clear that the story of addiction isn't about just one person. It's never just one person. The real challenge for all of us is to see the invisible wounds and to start building a system of healing that actually helps everyone involved, leaving no one behind.